Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Single Best Idea, special edition with 3 voices today, just in celebration of Ed Ludlow and Bloomberg Technology and all what they did at Apple yesterday. First, we go to the shock and awe of European politics. Alberto Gallo was with us from Andromeda. He's absolutely definitive on debt, and for the first time, I really heard him lean into where you could have geopolitical and national political shock that moves price lower and yield higher. He's been writing about that. And of course, with the, I think chaos is a proper word, the chaos in France towards their 2 elections. They're feeling it right now. There's no question about it. Virginie Maisonneuve is iconic on Wall Street and on a transatlantic perspective, identified with Schroeder. She's with Allianz now, as is Mohamed El-Arian. And Virginie Maisonneuve, we should talk about equities, bonds, currencies, commodities, Lagarde, the usual. But here we rip up the script. Virginie Maisonneuve on her France and Mr. Macron.
Well, I think they are definitely linked in the sense that if you look at President Macron, he's done quite well on the economic front, the defense front, if you want, the diplomacy front. But some of the concern that have led the French electorate to move to the right were domestic issues, issues of security, fear of the war, terrorist attacks, a lot of attacks on kids at school, for example, immigration, integration, all those issues are important. And of course, the far-right party is more in support, as Madame Le Pen and Bardella have made it public, more in support of Trump. So there's definitely some links there.
I want to make an editorial point here. We have a style at Bloomberg like anyone else. Merriam-Webster leads a charge on that. But there's been some criticism, too, Bloomberg Surveillance, on the use of the phrase far right. That is not an editorializing by us. That's the actual names of the parties in France. There are, I believe, 3, definitely 2, but even 3 separate parties in France that use the phrase far right. We're not making that up. That's what they're called. I just really want to mention that because I've had some heated responses. Thank you so much for listening to what we do every day. I lasted 16 minutes. I tuned in. I watched paratroopers out of the sky and Tim Cook standing, trying not to step on solar panels. And it was the Apple thing. I lasted 16 minutes. Fortunately, a few others didn't. Dan Ives is with us now. Gene Munster will join in a moment. You know what Dan Ives is going to say. He's going to say he's all enthused up. But it's an important voice because with a 20% lift in Apple since April, once again, Dan Ives looks smart. Let's listen.
This is really Apple's castle. This Apple Intelligence, it's really now the start of AI coming to most consumers. I think they're going to be able to do whatever you want. Ultimately, this is going to be an AI brain in your phone that's going to understand the user and the owner of the phone the more and more that they're together. So they're going to understand your habits, restaurants, which people you like to pick up the phone from, which you don't, what photos you prioritize over others. And now, and this is the key, Tom, hundreds of apps will be built on this stack. That is the key from a services perspective.
So there's the analysis there. And I really want to point out, it was something to see Apple through the morning off $2 or $3 off the top of my head, $193, maybe. Yeah, I think $193 was the price. And it opened with, what can I say? A lift out to $197. And I'm looking here now. My eyes are failing me on the screen, but nevertheless, a lift here. To Eric can see the screen from 6 miles away. You got eyesight like Ted Williams, don't you? What price is Apple at right now on that screen with Katie Greifeld? Can you actually see that? It's up 3.5 points. Apple's higher. Let's leave it at that. We'll state you 2 ideas here. A single best idea: A, Apple's higher, and B, I'm blind. Okay, let's move on. Gene Munster, observed that Paul Sweeney is way behind the tech curve.
Hey, Gene, I'm out here sporting an iPhone 11. Is this change to AI? Is that gonna prompt me to get back into the Apple Store and upgrade in September?
I think it will. And I think that this is the fundamental piece that a lot of those who just analyze this so closely are focused on the trees versus the forest, is that I think that people like you are going to see these features and want to get upgraded. And maybe in your case, you're probably due for an upgrade either way. But I think in the case of many people who are 3 years out, I think that they're going to see these features and undoubtedly want them. This is the biggest change in Apple since the iPhone came out. And that's a bold statement, but just to put some perspective on it, over the past, call it 15 or so years since the iPhone came out, what we have seen is that, we've had things like Vision Pro, we've had services like Apple TV Plus, we've had the iPad, we've had the App Store. Those have been kind of the cornerstone announcements, but what this fundamentally does is change the way that we interact with these devices. It's going to add more value. And Paul, I think that is going to be a major catalyst for upgrades here.
Gene Munster with Paul Sweeney, it's like, I like how he said, people like you. But I want to make clear here, Paul doesn't have the oldest phone that we have at Bloomberg Surveillance. That is the Motorola Dynatac 8000X that John Tucker still handles. It was with Gordon Gekko in a movie a few years ago. Tucker's still using that big old thing. So he's the most far behind. Maybe even Tucker will get a new iPhone. This has been a lot of fun. We need to say thank you to Ed Ludlow of Bloomberg Technology for all of his value-add input. Many others at Bloomberg for helping us with technology. Mandeep Singh and Anurag Rana as well. Little lengthy today, but a special with 3 voices on Apple Podcasts' single best idea.